Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a world of ancient technology and, well, secret wisdom. Just imagine for a second, a single flame that could burn for 1,600 years without any fuel, oracles who could actually see into the future, and massive monuments that secretly held the keys to the universe.
So let's just jump right in with a question that sounds completely impossible. Could a single lamp, sealed away in a tomb, really stay lit for over 1,600 years without anyone ever refueling it? It sounds like pure fantasy, right?
But here's the thing. This isn't just a fairy tale. There are a ton of historical accounts that describe finding these ever-burning lamps. So the real mystery isn't whether people believed it happened, but how in the world the ancients could have actually pulled it off.
Okay, so let's get into this riddle of the ancient lights. These perpetual flames were supposedly found deep inside sealed tombs all across the ancient world. We're talking from the deserts of Egypt to the hills of Rome, often left as these, eternal offerings to the gods of the underworld.
Maybe the most famous story comes from the 15th century, when Paul III was pope. A tomb was opened up in Rome. They thought it belonged to Cicero's daughter, Tulliola. And after being sealed for almost 1,600 years, explorers were just stunned. Because inside, a single lamp was still burning. The story goes that as soon as the fresh air rushed in, poof, the flame went out. And no one could ever get it to light again.
And believe me, that story about Tulliola's tomb is just the tip of the iceberg. Accounts of these impossible lamps pop up everywhere in the ancient world. St. Augustine wrote about a lamp in a temple to Venus that couldn't be put out by wind or water. Another one, hanging over the city gates of Edessa, supposedly burned for more than 500 years. When you have all these reports from all these different places, it gets a lot harder to just brush it all off as a myth.
So this obviously brings us to the big question. How was this even possible? The theories that have popped up over the centuries are just as wild as the lamps themselves, and man, they sparked some serious debate.
The explanations really fall into two big camps, which kind of tells you a lot about how people saw the world back then. On one side, you've got the supernatural theories. Early Christian writers, for instance, were pretty quick to blame the devil, saying it was a trick, a false miracle to lead people astray. But on the other side, you had more scientific types who were convinced there had to be a rational answer, probably some lost secret of alchemy or just some seriously clever engineering.
Take the Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher. At first, he was firmly in that supernatural camp. He argued that the devil himself was behind the whole thing, creating these never-ending flames just to trick people into following false religions.
But, and this is what's so cool, Kircher, being a man of science, eventually just threw out his own supernatural theory. Instead, he came up with this brilliant bit of reverse engineering. He figured it was all just a magnificent trick by ancient priests who had cleverly run secret pipes from the lamps down to natural underground oil deposits, creating a perfect self-fueling system.
Now, other theories weren't about clever mechanics, but about the materials. They suggested that the wick itself was woven from asbestos, a fireproof mineral that alchemists had a great name for. They called it salamander's wool. The fuel was even more mysterious. Maybe some kind of legendary oil cooked up by alchemists that could somehow regenerate itself as it burned.
This whole idea of lost knowledge, of a forgotten science, wasn't just about physical objects. It went a lot deeper, to something even more profound, having a direct line to the gods. Which brings us to the Oracle of Delphi, one of the most fascinating mysteries in all of history. For hundreds of years, this was the most important shrine in ancient Greece. It's where a priestess, called the Pythia, was believed to channel the god Apollo and deliver prophecies about the future.
And you gotta understand, this wasn't some random person just having a vision. As you can see here, it was a highly structured ritual. Before the Pythia could speak for Apollo, she had to go through this whole process, bathing in sacred water, fasting, chewing on bay leaves. Every single step was designed to purify her and open her mind up to the divine. So after all that, she would sit on a golden tripod over a crack in the earth, breathe in these sweet-smelling vapors, and fall into this wild trance. Ancient writers said she was literally possessed by the god Apollo. And what's really amazing is that modern geologists have actually found that psychoactive gases, like ethylene, were seeping out of fault lines right under the temple. It suggests there might have been a real scientific reason for these divine visions. So okay, we've got potentially lost technology with the lamps, right? And a lost connection to the divine with the oracle. Our last stop explores an even bigger idea. What if the secret knowledge wasn't just something they used, but something they physically built
into the most famous structures ever made.
This is where it gets really mind-bending. Our source puts forward this pretty radical idea that the 7 wonders of the world weren't just ancient tourist traps. No, they were esoteric monuments meticulously designed by initiates of the mystery schools to preserve and pass down secret universal truths.
And according to this theory, the arrangement was anything but random. Each of the 7 wonders was a physical symbol for one of the 7 classical planets and everything it represented. So for example, the Temple of Diana was linked to the moon and the idea of generation. And the Great Pyramid, that was tied to Mercury, the planet of wisdom and writing.
Let's just take the Colossus of Rhodes for a second. It wasn't just some giant bronze statue. With that crown of solar rays on its head, it was an occult symbol for the enlightened human soul, what the mysteries called the Sun Man or the Universal Savior, a really key idea for them.
All right, so where does all of this leave us? We've got these perpetual lamps, oracles speaking for the gods, and massive monuments encoded with cosmic secrets. How do we start to connect all these amazing threads?
I mean, we've looked at what could be lost chemical formulas for lamps that burn forever, a ritualized connection to the divine at Delphi, and architectural wonders that were built to be cosmic maps. So the question is, were these all just separate, amazing achievements? Or are we actually looking at evidence of a unified worldview, a lost system where science, spirituality, and art were all just different parts of the same whole?
Ultimately, all these stories really challenge our modern view of the past, don't they? They suggest a depth of knowledge that maybe we've just lost. And that leaves us with one heck of a final question to chew on. If these marvels were actually real, what other secrets, what other forgotten sciences are still out there just waiting for us to rediscover them?